Right out the gate, from my own point of view and the sentiment I see online, Private Music by Deftones turned out to be the best record the band has released since Koi no Yokan in 2012. Gore is easily one of the most divisive records in the band's career. While Ohms seems to have done better with fans, it didn't seem like it was quite enough. Statistically speaking, Private Music seems to have won over majority of the fan base and critics alike. Anyway, enough of this fluff, let's get into the latest album by Deftones. Just FYI, I have not read or watched any reviews on this record, but you know, there's things popping up on my feed even if I try to avoid the information in regards to the feedback on Private Music. But from what I've seen, people seem to be happy. Instead of going track by track, I want to talk about the album as a whole first. And Private Music is exactly that. It's an album. Deftones didn't get caught up on this trend of focusing on singles. It's a common trend which helps kill the album experience, along with the whole streaming of music concept. The record feels consistent with itself sonically speaking and flows as such. Several songs flow and transition into each other, which is an approach I appreciate quite a bit. This approach makes me want to re-listen the entirety of the record every time, instead of going for specific songs selectively. Of course, I have favorites, but I still prefer to experience Private Music in its entirety. The mixing this time around is very solid. I have listened to the album on decent headphones that have a rather heavy low end, on earpods, and even on laptop speakers. And on any device, the record sounds great, which is not easy to accomplish whatsoever. On proper headphones, vocals get lost just a little bit in some instances because of the fact that Chino's vocals are often quite distant and washed out. But this is a minor complaint because this issue happens only for brief moments. Okay, let's get into the opener and first single that was released. I have spoken about this one briefly in my previous video, so I don't want to repeat myself. In short, the song is good on its own and as an opener of this record. However, when you listen to the rest of the record, it's actually one of the weaker songs, which is kinda wild because the song is very good. It's probably the safest song on the album, and after hearing Private Music in its entirety, I almost wish that the band released another song as a single. But I feel like this was intentional and the band didn't want to give away the fact that the band has made some interesting and risky choices on this record. Locked Club, great riff on the verse. Right out the gate, the song rails you in. And Chino, man, on this record, the man shines more than he has in over a decade. And he's doing something a little different on the verses. I don't recall him doing this pseudo-rap thing quite like this. It feels almost as if he's preaching and not so much rapping. I think this approach harkens all the way back to very early days of Deftones, when the band had quite a bit of reggae influence. That was pre-adrenaline.
I'm such a need divider, don't think I'm nowhere, I'm right beside you.
In Locked Club, Chino has a lot of swagger and personality, which he never really lacks. And the flow he has is quite unpredictable. You can't quite put your finger on what he's going to do in each line before you hear it. So a sense of surprise is kinda always there. And this theme will be common on the entirety of the record in every aspect. I like the chorus as well, and I can't really find any fault with this song. Ecdysis. When the intro begins, it's kind of a surprise again. Right after the synth comes in, I'm thinking, oh, looks like Frank is far more prominent on this record because we're on song 3 and we can hear him on every track, which honestly is a very welcome sight for me, and this is something I have wanted to hear from Deftones for the longest time. I love when electronic elements are used tastefully in heavy music, but then the bass comes in and I'm like, fuck, that's a sick bass line. I think we didn't get something like this since Tempest on Koi no Yokan. And yeah, as you know, we have a new bassist, Fred Seblan? I don't know. Who's been in quite a few bands over the years, but mostly as a touring musician. But apparently he actually played on Private Music. And if he wrote this bass line, Fred, please, more of this. I also really love the snare sound on this song. The bass and verse alone give me goosebumps still as I was writing this review and was listening to the song in the background. And I've heard it at least 5 times by now. Steph sounds great on the verses and as the song progresses. Great tune. Infinite Source. This one was the first song to me that I felt like it might be a skipper. And I know it's a favorite among many fans. I must say I'm not the biggest fan of Deftones going light in general. So it's somewhat of a personal preference, but the song kinda grew on me just yesterday. So I must say I was kinda surprised at myself. This moment at the 149 mark is my favorite in the song, so it's another good song. Souvenir. Man, I love that verse, and it has a lot to do with Frank's input. I really love the sound of those chimes. Goosebumps again. What the fuck, man? How are you doing this on album 10? At 153, chorus comes in and I am sold. The song is already a banger to my ear, and that outro by Frank is so immersive and to me seems very appropriate. This is something Frank started doing on Ohms, and the same idea happened on this record too, but in my opinion to a greater effect. And the song kinda gently fades into the next one. CXZ. This is one of my favorite songs on the album, and the riff on the verses is one of my favorites on the entire record. To me, it's reminiscent of When Girls Telephone Boys. The verses are so powerful and impactful, and what I love about this one is that we get to hear this riff 4 times. And the last time it's played, the vocal lines are a combination of the lines from the chorus and the verses. It's a nice touch. The vocal melody on the chorus is simply beautiful. I think about you all the time. It's somewhat of a breather and perfectly placed coming after one of the heaviest songs on the record. Like I said at the start, the album flows naturally. But as I said before, I'm not big on Deftones light, so this is probably my least favorite on the album. However, it may grow on me because, as mentioned before, I love to enjoy private music in its entirety. But I like the addition of acoustic guitar at the end there. It's yet another thing that I don't think Deftones have ever done on a record, with the exception of B-sides and acoustic versions of their songs, of course. So I think it's a nice touch. Milk of the Madonna. This is another one where the band channels that post-hardcore sound very much like on CXZ. Though I must say this one took me a few listens to get into, but eventually, my god, I'm losing my voice. I've been smoking too much, man. Gotta quit that shit. Though I must say, this one took a few listens to get into, but eventually it grew on me. Okay, we're down to last 3 tracks, and I have to mention that these are 3 very strong songs to close the record with. Another thing that is noteworthy when it comes to these 3 songs is how they seamlessly flow into each other. God Hands is one of my favorite songs on the record and one that I instantly loved. The opening riff on the verse is just so good, and Chino again delivers this aggressive pseudo-rap thing with a very unique delivery and flow. By this point, I'm convinced that Chino must have been very inspired when working on this record. The chorus on this song is probably my favorite on the album, and it has a lot to do with Chino's vocal melody. And the outro is very much Deftones, heavy breakdown with that kinda swirly sound effect by Frank. Yeah, it's a great song and very easy to like as a Deftones fan. Metal Dream. This one surprised me from the start. The verses are very original and don't really sound like anything Deftones have done before. It's musically different to your run-of-the-mill Deftones song, and Chino again delivers interesting bars with a cool flow. Easily a standout on the song, and the chorus is just pretty. It's pretty. This is the best way I can describe it. And then Metal Dream very naturally transitions into The Part in the Body. I simply love the intro of the song, love the dark and moody atmosphere of it. Then the guitar comes in and Chino
There's a room we hang in space.
Man, he's full of surprises on this one. I don't think I have ever heard him sing so low on an actual Deftones song. For a split second I was like, is it a guest vocalist? But no, it's Chino indeed. And yes, we have heard him engage into his lower register, but it usually was done when they covered a song like Ghost and such. There was also a live cover he did with the Dillinger Escape Plan a while ago, where he also sang quite low.
Start anywhere to what you want. I don't care.
And I remember thinking, after hearing that, why doesn't he do that on any of Deftones' songs? But over the years, I have learned that the answer is quite simple, actually. Most singers don't usually engage into the extremes of their vocal range for the purpose of sustainability when it comes to live shows. It's only wise to mainly remain in the comfortable parts of the vocal range. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidelined by this topic. Chino's just full of surprises on this album. The bridge is another highlight for me, and the song ends the same way it started, with the electronic stuff. It's like a perfect closer for the album. Overall, the album feels very purposeful and intentional. It feels very much like a concept album, which it may very well be. In terms of lyrics and concept of the record, as I said, I tried to avoid most of the news, reviews, etc. Even when Milk of the Madonna came out, I didn't listen to it because I wanted to experience as much of the album as possible at once, with the exception of My Mind is Mountain, of course. So I don't know for sure, but to me, Private Music sounds like a concept album. To me, the main highlights on the album is Chino and, surprisingly, Frank. I feel like he added so much to this record, and this is something I was waiting for a very long time. I may have said that already, but I want to point it out again. I've seen some comments on socials that the album is very inspired by their early work, and I don't necessarily see it that way. Yes, Chino kinda raps on this record alone more than he has since 2000, but his delivery is just different. The drumming is kind of reminiscent of Around the Fur or White Pony, but overall it doesn't feel like nostalgia-infused record. First of all, because the production just sounds different to what the band did 25 plus years ago. That's just by default. In a strange way, production-wise, to me it sounds more like Ohms and Gore, but just done better and with more variety and precision. Plus, I think the songs are just written way better and with more inspiration. Guitars sound sick and Steph doesn't lean too much into the low-tuned riff and breakdowns that a lot of bands nowadays kinda ripped off from Deftones, to be frank. To me, it sounds like the band is very aware of what's going on the scene and the overabundance of guitarists playing 7, 8 or even 9 string who essentially sound the same. So it feels like Deftones looked at that and just did the polar opposite. For the most part. This made the record sound very fresh. It's insane that a band can deliver something like this 10 albums deep. While I think Gore and Ohms didn't quite live up to my expectations, I still knew that Deftones will find a way to surprise us, and they have with Private Music. The tough part for the band now is, how do you follow up an album like this? Private Music will easily be in my top 5 albums by the band and perhaps even in top 3. I think this is better than Koi no Yokan and Diamond Eyes, which is kinda wild. FYI, I am not the biggest fan of Diamond Eyes, but Koi is a damn good record. What I love about Private Music the most is that every time I want to experience it, I want to hear the entire thing, and this is rare even for Deftones. I should have said this at the start, but whatever. Upon the first listen, I was questioning myself. Do I really like this record, or am I forcing myself to like it? It was a little strange, but then it was like surprise after surprise. Things that I didn't expect to happen happened. So I quickly realized that this record will take several listens before I can come to a conclusion, which is common for music, but especially true for Private Music, because there's a lot to explore. I don't make reviews that much and don't really have a score system, but this is a nearly perfect record. I need to listen to it more, but it's like a 9-10 out of 10 territory. I don't think I can really fault the record for anything. I need to listen to it more, and with time it will settle. But this is great stuff. What an inspiration Deftones has been to me and still is to this day. Mark my words, modern bands will start to rip off the sound Deftones achieved on this album, which they already do, but they copied elements that are not very present on private music. Deftones is making waves again, and they are one of those bands that steer the direction of the scene instead of following the current. Inspiring record, sick, timeless band. I love Deftones. By the way, it's a bit of Deftones Central on my channel and will be for a couple more videos because the time is right. I am working on Voices episode 9 at the moment, featuring Chino, obviously, so stick around for that. Thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts, reviews, opinions and whatnot down in the section below. If this kind of video is your cup of tea, please consider subscribing and don't forget to drop a like. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.